Thanks so much for being with us here on Atlanta News First Plus. I'm Joy Limnacker, and I want to let you know that at any moment now we are expecting a meeting to begin in Rockdale. And this concerns that ongoing issue at Biolab. And residents, community leaders, activists are going to hear from citizens and business owners, others impacted by the Biolab chemical fire in Conyers and Rockdale County. The meeting is set to begin actually at 10 o'clock this morning, so really at any moment now as we hit the 10 o'clock hour. And Atlanta News First, we do have a crew there, and we're going to bring that to you live as soon as it begins. But this is a really important meeting because it comes after a Rockdale County official died just following a hearing at the state capitol on the Biolab fire. Kenny Johnson passed away just yesterday, moments after he testified about the negative impact that the Biolab fire has had on his life and his community. He passed out after complaining of shortness of breath. Well, he served as the Rockdale Soil and Water Conservation District State Board Chairman. We are working to get more information about his death. And this meeting that's set to take place at 10 o'clock this morning is at the Empowerment Unlimited Church. We're going to go to that live just as soon as that begins. Also, we continue to follow the latest with hurricane preparations for Milton, which are very much underway. And this comes, of course, as people are recovering from Helene and the damage there. Hurricane Milton is churning closer to the Florida coast. The powerful storm expected to make landfall along with west central coast of Florida sometime tonight. State leaders encouraging more people in the state's storm path, in the storm's path to leave right now. And millions of the residents have been ordered to evacuate, many of them taking heed of the warning. Thousands of Floridians have already left their homes and businesses as that storm inches closer. And Atlanta News First Asia Wilson is live in Hampton, or I should say put together a report in Hampton at the Atlanta Motor Speedway, which is one place where evacuees can go.
Atlanta Motor Speedway is open and ready to serve any evacuees from Florida. You can already see some RVs and campers here right now. We're also told southern counties in Georgia are expected to get hit with heavy rain from Hurricane Milton as well. It's the reason why Atlanta Motor Speedway here in Hampton is opening up space. According to their website, the Speedway is offering dry camping free of charge in its Legends Premium Campground for RVs and Legends Tent Campground for pop-up campers and tents. Evacuees staying in these campgrounds will also have complimentary access to a nearby shower house while staying here at the Speedway. We spoke with one woman who came to McDonough from Florida with her husband and 4 kids. She says hotels in the area are full and they are fearful about what's next.
A little scared because we don't know if we're going to get back and have our house. I don't know. So yeah, it's scary.
Now, GEMA has several shelters and places for evacuees to go, all of them in South Georgia, 2 in Macon. We have everything you need to know posted right now on AtlantaNewsFirst.com. Reporting from Atlanta Motor Speedway, Asia Wilson, Atlanta News First.
And disaster relief workers here in Georgia have been swamped. They're still helping people deal with the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, of course. Now also trying to help Floridians who are evacuating away from Hurricane Milton's path. Sarah Hammond is the Salvation Army in downtown Atlanta with how they're trying to juggle it all.
As thousands are evacuating Florida ahead of Hurricane Milton, we know agencies here in Georgia are on standby to help. Organizations like the Red Cross and the Salvation Army are gathering supplies here in Atlanta ready to move to Florida. The Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security Agency says they're preparing by actively repositioning trucks with ready-eat meals. Georgia Power has also been dealing with putting many of their resources towards getting power back on in parts of the state hit by Helene, but say they are preparing to send crews to respond to Florida. Barry Corbett, the executive officer for Georgia's territory of the Salvation Army, says preparations are underway at their headquarters, even as they continue to help the people in South Georgia.
We are staging a good bit of equipment this evening from other divisions here in Atlanta, ready to deploy down to Florida as soon as it's clear. We can't get too close because we're not exactly sure the path of the storm.
And he says Georgia officials have set up roughly 10 shelters across the state that will be open for about 3 days. In downtown Atlanta, Sarah Hammond for Atlanta News First.
And Hurricane Milton, as you can see, turning there off the coast. Here is Atlanta News First Alert meteorologist Courtney Jacobazzi. So what's the latest with Milton?
Oh gosh, it is still such a powerful storm, a major Category 4 hurricane as it barrels towards the Gulf Coast of Florida. So again, Milton, a major Category 4 hurricane. We should get another update within the hour here from the National Hurricane Center. But again, a very, very powerful hurricane with sustained winds at its core of 155 miles per hour, moving very quickly as well off to the northeast at 16 miles per hour. So as we got more advisories in from the National Hurricane Center, we were seeing this storm move faster and faster. This does have its sights set on the Tampa Bay area, expected to make landfall more than likely just south of Tampa, but it could potentially make a direct hit to Tampa. If that does happen, if this storm does make a direct hit to the Tampa area, that'll be the first time a major hurricane makes a landfall in the Tampa Bay area since 1921. And if you go back and just look up the history of that storm and some of the images that came out of that, it absolutely decimated that area. So we are thinking about all of our neighbors to the south, a lot of people here in Georgia taking shelter and escaping the storm. So we welcome all of them. Just, make sure you give them our wonderful Southern hospitality and make them feel welcome and comfortable in a pretty scary time. So let's take you through the latest track here. We are expecting this storm to make a landfall sometime after midnight tonight as a major Category 4 hurricane. And as it approaches the coast, it is going to encounter some wind shear. What that is a change of wind direction and speed with height, and that tears apart storms. So we have been seeing this storm start to interact with that a little bit, but nonetheless, this is expected to have catastrophic impacts along the coast, and it is expected to weaken as it makes its way over the peninsula, but it will maintain hurricane status across the entirety of the state of Florida. So impacts expected from the Tampa Bay area to Sarasota, down to Fort Myers, all the way through central Florida, including Orlando, and then it will move off of the Space Coast, potentially impacting places like Port Canaveral, where a lot of the cruise ships are in the Florida area. And then it'll continue to weaken as it makes its way off the coast as we head into Thursday night and Friday morning. So by really Thursday evening, it'll look completely different on the west coast of Florida. Things will start to dry out and conditions will start to improve. But of course, that will reveal all of the aftermath of the storm. Let's take you through First Alert Futurecast. So you can see the storm churning out in the Gulf. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this full for you so you can just kind of see a bigger view here. This storm is already going to start to bring those outer rain bands in this morning and through the afternoon. So very heavy rain. We have a severe weather threat there as well due to this storm. When you're on the right side of landfalling tropical systems, which pretty much the entirety from Miami all the way up to Daytona Beach, Cedar Key, they're going to be getting those outer rain bands today. They're on the right side of this storm. So there is actually a tornado watch, meaning tornadoes are possible for a huge portion of Florida from Orlando off to the south. We've already seen a handful of tornado warnings in the Miami viewing area and the West Palm Beach area as well. So heavy rain will be likely within these outer rain bands, and that's going to add to the flooding threat that is very high from Tampa into Orlando into Daytona Beach. The storm will potentially make a landfall around 9 o'clock at night. This model is one of the faster models. This is our graph model. It did very well with Helene. But either way, after sunset tonight, this storm expected to make a landfall. And you'll notice the eye really starts to expand. So that's a sign of weakening, but that's also a sign that the wind field is going to grow. So that's going to increase that wind threat really statewide here as the storm makes landfall. As it does, very heavy rain ongoing in Tampa to Orlando up to Daytona, into the St. Augustine area, those outer rain bands impacting Fort Myers, and storm surge actively ongoing here. As the storm moves north, it's going to continue to bring heavy rain to northeast Florida and South Georgia. So parts of South Georgia will have at least a slight impact from this storm in the form of rain, some gusty wind, maybe a small storm surge threat along the coast as well. So if you live directly along the coast of Georgia from Savannah to St. Simons, Edisto Island, maybe some 2 to 4 foot storm surge is possible there. But it does look like the storm threat along the coast is kind of diminishing. So I'm thinking more of a 2 to 3 foot storm surge along the coast, and that would impact those of you who are directly on the coast, not too far inland. So Anyway, a lot of the homes that are along the coast from Savannah down to St. Simons, I believe, are on stilts. So that shouldn't have a huge impact. And again, the wind isn't going to be a huge issue for the coast. We're really just worried about the water along the coastline. So just make sure you're prepared for that. If you have family or friends along the coast, I'm sure there's probably sandbags being handed out. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea just to prepare just in case some of that water does rush inland as the storm kind of parallels the coast there. So again, main impact for the Tampa area is going to be tonight after sunset. Of course, the severe weather threat, the heavy rain, the flooding threat will start this morning and continue through the day. And then that storm surge will move inland as we head through the evening tonight. Storm surge, essentially when the ocean comes inland. This storm is just going to push a wall of water from the Gulf inland along the coast there. So really thinking about our neighbors to the south. We'll continue on with talking about the potential storm surge. Now, these numbers have continued to fall because that track, we're starting to get a better idea of it. This storm has gone through multiple eye wall replacements. And when that happens, sometimes the eye can kind of jog in a different direction, and that will ultimately alter the direction that the entire storm moves. So it's gone through several of those phases. So we've been seeing it kind of jog north and south. And right now it looks like we are starting to have the storm move south. And I do want to note, we are starting to see the folks over in Rockdale County. They are about to have a meeting on the Biolab fire. So we're going to head on over to that and check in with them.
And bringing awareness to Rockdale County. So we have some of the ladies and gentlemen that you see here. We started last week meeting with Dr. Bill Nelson in the back. Can you raise your hand? And he jumped on a call with us to do a Zoom call and to hear our concerns. And from that, we continue to have discussions, and it just continued to grow. But before we move forward, we want to give thanks and praise to God, because for me, without God, we couldn't be here. We also want to give our deepest condolences to Kenny Johnson's wife. And, you know, it was really a sad event to see him, you know, suffering. So as a community, a lot has happened out of Biolab, out of this. It's not just a matter of the fumes coming up, but the effect that it has had on the community is tripling. And we really need to come together as a community, not just in crisis, but we need to be the new leaders of Rockdale. Each and every one of us need to be the new leaders of Rockdale, because we're constantly facing danger, disappointment, financial hardship because of the decisions that are being made. So I want to give everybody an opportunity to share their experiences. Who wants to share? Yes. And we'll have Pastor Muse, him and his lovely wife, to come up and give that prayer.
Amen. Praise the Lord, everybody. Amen. Let's bow. Oh, gracious and all loving Father, we come this day not on a happy occasion, Father God, but we come in your presence, dear Lord, asking you to be in our midst. We come, Father God, with hearts of sorrow for the loss of Mr. Johnson. We just ask you, Father, to be in our midst, to word our mouths, and allow us to conduct this meeting decently and in order. Make sure to bless every family that's represented here, Father God, and that some questions will be answered, Father God, some actions will be taken, Father. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Good morning again. Hi, I'm co-pastor Barbara Muse of Empowerment Unlimited Church. My husband, Pastor Ray Muse. And we we're not just a church here, we also have a nonprofit organization that we operate here out of our on our premises called Old Ministries, Bread of Life Development Ministries. And we provide free meals for children all through the summer, after school meals, snacks and supper. And like a lot of other businesses, our business has been affected by this biochemical lab. We had to close down for a few days. We were always concerned about the safety of our employees and our staff, and just wasn't really sure if we should reopen. But we trying to get meals out because we serve other counties as well. But our business is really affected too because we serve children at Rockdale County schools. We have an after-school program here. We pick up children from 5 schools every day, you know, Monday through Friday. So all of that was affected by this, just our normal daily lives and daily routines. And just on a personal note, I survived open heart surgery, heart patient. 2 months ago, I had pneumonia, and so just you're really paranoid about even stepping outside the doors. And our whole world changed. And I like to walk, you know, go to Johnson Park usually and walk every day. All of that changed when this, you know, fire began and started. And so, you know, we just really are looking for resolution, you know, resolution. And we're really praying for our community because so many of us are affected and have medical conditions and have just your daily lives being affected by this disaster. This is a disaster, and we should have been declared a disaster, you know, on day 1. But I just wanted to share that with you all.
We have Eric Williams here from the NAACP who would like to share some words with us.
Thank you very much. To talk what the assistant pastor just mentioned just now, what I wanted to confirm, and I don't know if it can answer this question. I was told that it was a state of emergency as of 5 days ago. So with that being said, what has been done and what comes with being a state of emergency, because at this point I haven't heard anything thus far as funds, vouchers, or anything the individuals are getting for that. So is there anyone in here that represents Biolab or just has information that can answer those type of questions? Hearing none, I think that's what we need to get those answers very quickly, because from what I've been reading from some independent scientists, you know, Biolab is doing the test and they're providing them to the EPA, and that just doesn't make sense to me. It has to be independent testing. Without that, there's no one to verify and validate what's been their results, right? I know I saw that they've said there's no asbestos, but there can obviously be other harmful things, substances that are not being tested. Right now, from what I've read, it's only been asbestos. Brother Collins.
There has not been a state of emergency.
There has not? Wow. Okay, all right.
And we were at the Capitol yesterday. When we were at the Capitol yesterday, that was made clear at that hearing. There is no state of emergency, just so you know. But everybody has requested that the governor do that.
Okay. And that's basically my statement, just to validate where we are and what we're going to do to try to move forward. And just the bottom line, we have to fight to have independent testing. Because for Biolab to be doing their own testing, and that's the only testing that's been mandated thus far, that just makes no sense.
Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Walter C. Bannister. I attended the House and Senate delegation for Rockdale County yesterday up in Atlanta, and I've been working diligently with Avi and our team to help bring and shed light on the information that's actually being shared with us, which is erroneous and not viable communication with the current administration here in Rockdale County, also to include default with Biolab. I am a military retiree with 22 years of military service. I've been in various campaigns like Iraq, Afghanistan, and things of that nature. The way I feel when this thing had actually, this chemical explosion had initiated, I thought I was back in Iraq. My PTSD actually, it ignited, it accelerated and put me into an acute state, into a chronic state. Sometimes I feel like I was in Rockdale County, and sometimes I was back in Iraq, looking up and underneath oil fires or a burn pit. But with the training that I've actually received to try to mitigate my mental issues, I overcame those. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to point out a couple of things here. Number one, Avi had mentioned what do we want to see as a community. And I'm working here diligently around the clock, communicating with various people, various resources, various entities. Number one, we want to shut down Biolab. We want Biolab closed permanently. Okay? We want Biolab eradicated. We want them not only out of Conyers, we want them out of business completely. We don't want them in Louisiana. We don't want them anywhere. And okay, you say, Walter, why do you say that? Let me tell you why. And there's a justification for that. The EPA put out last Tuesday, 1 week ago, that the chemicals emitted from Biolab, anyone within a 1 mile radius has a 95% chance of cancer. I didn't say that. The EPA said that, and it's on their website. There's a 98% chance of cancer. CR 29, there has been numerous violations at the Code of Federal Regulation that falls up underneath OSHA that Biolab has violated. Time and time again, I've been here since 2009. They have violated so many codes with OSHA. Also, CR 49. CR 49 is the information that's supposed to be placed on hazardous moving transport items to transport hazardous waste from one point to the other. And I want to make this point because if you drove past the Biolab on Interstate 20, you see a number of chemical semis right outside there. And I've taken pictures of them. Guess what? By OSHA standards, each one of those particular vehicles is supposed to have a placard on it with a designated number. And that number is identified with corrosive, flammables, and things of that nature. Guess what? There's none there. I watched them leave without any placards there. That's to inform the community that there is some sort of hazardous material being transported through this particular area, which is not being happened. So they are not transparent, they, meaning Biolab, are not transparent with us as a community. But it just not only affects Rockdale County, it affects Newton County, it affects DeKalb County, it affects Fulton County, and as well as it affects Gwinnett County. These are all the counties that's actually been affected by this particular disaster, which should have been declared a state of emergency the day that it happened because of the lines of disaster that it actually went across. And I don't want to stay up here and talk too long, so I want to give my colleagues the opportunity to speak as well. I stated this yesterday, and I'm going to state it again, because I'm going to stay on top of it. I'm going to stay on top of this. They said, okay, what do you want, out of Biolab? Okay, we're looking for, when I say we're looking for a $1.4 billion settlement for the impact that it actually has left, not with just Rockdale, but all the other counties associated with it. Well, how did you come up with that $1.4 billion, Walter? Well, in the state of Ohio, Palestine, Ohio, the town of Palestine, Ohio, they was just awarded over a $600 million lawsuit with the Norfolk spill. And the chemicals that came out of that those Norfolk Southern rail cars does not even equate to the amount of chemicals that was stored in that large particular warehouse that sits right off of Interstate 20. That is a 57-acre facility stored with many numerous of chemicals. There is an acronym called ESSEN, they're responsible for monitoring the particle matters within the air. Dr. Ang from Georgia Tech, she stated that there was chlorine, sulfuric acid, and other chemicals that was actually emitted in the air. Okay, with this said, this is grounds for a huge lawsuit. It's not to put money into my pocket. It's not to put money in any of our pocket. It's to shut down Biolab and compensate those like Mr. Larry Cox, who has a business right next door to Biolab. To the young lady who was speaking yesterday, who has 32 acres of land, which she had to evacuate her horses, livestock, and things of that nature. Also, the last thing that I would like to say is this 57-acre estate that Biolab actually maintains. That particular area should be considered as a crime zone. The Rockdale County should not be allowed to do anything else with Biolab. I requested from state legislature that the current administration in Rockdale County be terminated for lack of communication and handling of this particular incident, and replace with state officials so they can come in and take over this, because there's too many improprieties that's actually going on at the current time, in which we deserve more than this as taxpayers of Rockdale County. The 57-acre facility is basically a landfill. Now it's considered a landfill. Okay, once the cleaning is up, what happens? Well, any landfill, it's 20 years before anything could be actually done on that particular site, 20 plus years. So we're looking at 20 years. I'm looking at $200 million for 20 years for the total time period. If you divide that up, it equates to X dollars to provide to the county and the city of Rockdale County. That's part of the $1.4 billion that we have proposed for an action lawsuit, because the facility that is currently housed on Biolab, the chemicals that have been in the soil, in the water, in the air, in the vegetation, it's going to take 20 plus years for those things to go. And what do we do with that 57-acre facility? It's just going to sit there for 20 some years. And there's nothing that's going to be happening to it, and we need some sort of compensation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Walter. All right, so Walter spoke a lot about the chemicals. I want to bring up Michelle Dawkins. Oh, she might have stepped out. We'll bring up Kirk Lofton.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kirk Lofton. I am a resident and a business owner in Rockdale County that was affected. My business is in Old Town Conyers. I have a custom tailoring shop down there. I have not been able to do work since this has happened. I went down, I typically go down for a small time right after it happened, maybe about on Tuesday last week, and when I went down there, my eyes immediately started burning, my throat started getting scratchy, and as of recent, then I noticed that my chest has been hurting a little bit. Behind this, my wife experienced a condition where she was throwing up over the weekend. So this chemical is a lot more serious than what they're pretending it to be. I'm so glad to see the young lady here, right? She was at the meeting last night, and that kind of touched my heart, because she brought a picture of her sister. The last thing that happened with Biolab, well, not the last, but in 2004, when they had this explosion, then her sister was diagnosed with cancer, I believe, a year later, and passed on shortly after that and everything. So these are things that they don't tell us. And one of the questions I raised last night at the meeting is that, well, what are the long-term effects? Is anybody talking about long-term effects? Because we'll sit here and we'll be in this county, and we'll breathe air, and we'll play on playgrounds, and we'll go to functions in this county for the next 10 years and everything. And 10 years from now, we'll come up with some kind of diagnosis, and we'll be right back at the table asking, what happened? What happened? So one of the big things that I want to say to everybody here and everybody that's listening, everybody that's watching, is that I know a lot of questions are, what can we do? What's our part right now? Our part is to do what we're doing. Write letters. that makes a noise, be the residents to reclaim Rockdale because it's getting out of hand. It's getting out of hand, and what's happening is that companies are coming down able to do what they want to do, as they've done before. Rockdale used to be a rural county where it was only horses and dirt paths and everything like that, and these companies felt like this was the perfect place to land a big factory or something like that. You have other factories in Rockdale that are doing the same thing, that gases are going in the air that we don't know about, that we're not told about. You have a Pratt company, that's a big company that's in Rockdale. You know, nobody talks about these things and everything. They don't talk about it until the explosion happens. Once that happens, then the EPA comes down. The EPA should have been down here. When this company, for a company that has something like this happen 4 times already, I believe 4 times since 2004, it's been in business since 1973, I believe they said. For a company that has this kind of record and for it to happen as recent as 2020, I believe, then they should have been on probation for the next 5 or 10 years. EPA should have been down here on a regular basis, making sure that they were following the guidelines and the safety precautions to protect everybody in this county. Because now we have a problem now. We have a problem. This chemical is not going to go away, even if the smell is gone. The chemical is not going to go away. And what's happening in Rockdale County is that these gases that are going in the air, it was okay at one time when you had all the trees and everything that are out here now. But now they cut trees down and building all kinds of properties and everything. You're losing the things that clean your air. You're losing everything that cleans your air. So these gases are going and they're staying in the air. They're coming out in our yard, on our rooftop, in our windows, in our kids, in ourselves. So this is the main concern for me. I've been on a battle with this county for years now, trying to get them to stop this building. I come from the city. I come from Washington, D.C. I've seen this all over before. I've seen Prince George's County outside of Washington, D.C. get built up just like this. So the first thing that they say down at the meetings and everything is that, oh, people want to come to Rockdale County. It's not that people want to come to Rockdale County. It's Atlanta's pushing people out. People have to come to Rockdale County. Because this is one of the counties over, and with any kind of gentrification, any kind of movement like this, then people are going to go to the outskirts. That's where they go. They go to the suburbs. This is a suburb. This is a county. It's not a city. I don't know why they try to keep making it a city. The city has public transportation. They don't have that here. Every car that comes in, every person that moves in the house here has 2 cars going out the door. So it's traffic. Fumes coming from your gas tanks and everything. Everybody's not going to have an electric vehicle. So everybody's not going to stay home and work. So these people are traveling. So not only do we have fumes coming from factories that are built for rural areas, but now you have fumes coming from cars that are overcrowding the streets of Rockdale County. These are things that they don't think about, and I've been trying to get them to think about these things. Me, Avi, all of us have been trying to get them to think on these levels for the longest time. This county is getting infected. It's infected. If they would just embrace the fact that they're a county and stop trying to be a city. And I always say this, in every meeting I go to, I say, you cannot make Chicago out of Mayberry. You can't do it. It doesn't work that way. Embrace what you have. Embrace the things that you can do in your county. Be the mom and pop county that everybody wants to come to and visit. Not the county that everybody wants to run away from because they get poisoned. So that's what I have to say right now.
We have Michelle Dawkins, who is our environmental expert, and she's going to give us some information to help us.
I don't like that term, environmental expert. But I will say that I've been blessed to have an opportunity to work in this industry for a long time. I started out at Clark Atlanta University in the Environmental Justice Resource Center under Dr. Robert Willard. And if you know that name, know that he used to be father of environmental justice. So this is an environmental justice fight that we're dealing with. One of the things that I've done since I left Clark Atlanta 12 years ago, is I started my own company. I have a business where I go into facilities like Biolab and I train the workers there. One of the things I recognize, if you don't have trained workers that know what OSHA protocol, what their regulations, their rules and regulations are, you end up in situations like you have there. I've gone into many companies, and the brother here, I was at that meeting on yesterday too, and the regulations that he was quoting, 29 CFR, Code of Federal Regulations, is where those guidelines for this chemical company stand. 49 CFR deals with Department of Transportation, which is the transportation, whether it's by air, rail, highway, pipeline, that's where those codes are. And some of what you said was correct, because there are some regulations that say that trucks don't, all of the trucks don't have to be placarded. There are some rules. If they don't have 1,001 pounds of the material in there, then they don't have to be placarded. If it's a mixed load, and that's just a part of the training. But the biggest passion that I have is training in communities. And I've had that opportunity to train in several communities, from Arkansas to New Orleans to Atlanta, and I still do community training in Savannah. Just was down there with that battle that we're having with the air quality regarding the port and training the community. So that's one of the things I'm going to offer to the Rockdale community. I will come and do some training. I put together a curriculum this week, and just the papers that you have in your hand, because a lot of people have been asking, what kind of information should we be gathering? This is some of the information. It talks about the required PPE. The mask that you're wearing right now will not support what you're dealing with. You need an N95. Everyone can't wear an N95 if you have COPD or any other pre-existing respiratory illness. You have to know what you're doing. I'm all about educating, empowering, and engaging the people that I work with. I want you to know this is why they're telling you to shelter in place at night. Why? Because the air, the dense air during those timelines means that that product starts to settle. One of the reasons why I don't get too much into the science, and on those conversations, it's sitting in meetings with with one of our former EPD regulators, and also with Dr. Ng from Georgia Tech. They do have a monitoring device in this community, but it doesn't capture everything. So some of this stuff we have to know ourselves. Historically, has EPA been on our side? No. I have a whole list of situations where EPA let us down. But the biggest one that I usually quote, and anybody that has ever taken a class with me, I always pull up 9/11. Why? Because there was an African-American attorney that died. And the reason why we had the congressional hearings after 9/11, because EPA was the one who made the call that said the air quality was good. It was not. When that young lady, she was an attorney at a prominent law firm, when they did their own air quality studies, they found out that the EPA had lied. And when they did the hearings, they asked that director why she lied, and she said because her boss made her. Who was her boss? President George W. Bush at that time. You know how many people have died and are continuing to die from 9/11? What I'm saying to you is that some of this stuff we have to know ourselves. We have to know what PPEs to wear. For any of you right now that are picking up anything, you need to be picking up things with gloves, not latex gloves. I teach all the time. 2 weeks ago, I bought a package of latex gloves and had an emergency, had a reaction. I was shocked, but I had to call 911 because I didn't realize. So make sure that you're getting nitrile gloves, and that if you're picking anything up, you're taking pictures. And that's one of the things I think I put on that form. Keep a diary of what is happening with you, your children, your animals, whatever you have. Keep records of that. Keep a running tab. If you have do it digitalized on your phone, keep a running tab. Date, what happened, what it felt like. Mentally, if you're going through if you're having mental fog, document, document, document. This information will be coming up. One of the other things I'd like to say to the community, I don't live in Rockdale. I live on the Henry Clayton line. But I was at a company training the other day, and they were telling me that they smell it over there. So, and different things. I'm not out of my house a lot unless I'm out training, right? And most of my training is usually out of state anyway. But one of the things I've been telling people, in addition to documenting everything, is just making sure that you're checking on one another. Everybody's not going to tell you when they're not feeling different, but sometimes you can feel it. Yesterday was a very scary day for us yesterday. Very, very scary. To see somebody who had just given a presentation, and then the next thing you know, that person's not there anymore. And so what that did was it renewed the ignition that was already in me. that fire that said, so when she asked me if I would come to this meeting, I was like, oh yeah, because now I'm angry. I don't know if it had anything to do with the, stuff that's going on, but just the fact that that person, at least he was able to speak his truth. But we need everybody. We need you all. What I was going to say is, we can't have one group over here meeting and one group over here and one group over here. This is one where we have to stand together. United we stand, divided we fall. There's a whole lot I wanted to say. I got all kinds of documents here that I've been putting together. I wanted to mention the N95s, for those of you that can wear them. Do you guys know what an N95 is versus a regular mask? A respirator mask? But in industry, the only time you can wear an N95 is if you get medical clearance from your physician. Because everyone can't wear them. So if you know you're asthmatic, or if you know you already have a pre-existing respiratory, I would not advise you to wear one unless you get that cleared by your doctor. Now, there are a lot of people who can't access medical facilities. So that's something that as a community you have to demand, that we get maybe Morehouse School of Medicine or someone else that we trust to come into our community and provide those kinds of services. Skin protection, making sure that you are covering your skin, wiping off everything before you utilize it. Because one of the reasons why I don't talk about the science is because there's a lot of inconclusive stuff out here. They haven't even told you what else is out there. All I keep hearing is hydrochloric acid and chlorine. Well, I've gone into many of these companies. I know there's more than that. And I spoke to a young man who worked there for about a month, he told me, and I asked him a question, where was your safety data sheet book binder? Do you know where it was? He said, no, they never told us that. He said, I only know about this because of the previous company. There's not one person in that building. If I had walked in and did an inspection and asked them a question, if they told me they didn't know where that was, I would have walked them right over there. And I would have held that manager or supervisor accountable. Because when you work in those companies, there's several things you must know. You must know. Okay? And I've not heard anything about the workers, and I asked that question on yesterday, and I'm going to continue to ask that, and I'm sure they probably silenced them. The health monitoring, if you guys have any kind of air purifying mechanisms, then you need to utilize them. I have air monitors in my home, right? Because I'm a scientist, I got all kind of little gadgets. But I do, I have one, I forgot the one that I wear around my neck, because I traveled with that. During COVID, I made sure every plane I got on, I had my air monitoring device. I need to make sure I'm okay. I just forgot to put it on this morning. But those are some simple things. I will make myself accessible, provide my information. I will strongly encourage you all, if you have not been medically checked and you live in this environment, please get checked. If you have to go to the public health department, and we need to put pressure on them to make sure that they're doing that kind of assessment for this community. Please get checked. We don't know how fast something happens with one person versus the other. Yes, most of the time this is a chronic situation, meaning that you don't see signs right away. But in 1988, in my hometown in Springfield, Massachusetts, we had a chlorine company explode like this. After about a week, everything was dead almost, all of the vegetation. My parents lived about not even a mile away from that. And I was fresh out of college. I wasn't in this industry yet. I think I had just started as a microbiologist at one of the companies there, but I didn't know anything about this stuff. And it wasn't until this happened that I went back and said, oh yeah, let me see when that was. But they didn't do a lot as far as the community. And we didn't know what to do anyway. We just listened to what they told us to do, and I went back just recently to see what the outcome was. Nobody's done any studies since then. I think the University of Mass started, but nobody, so I don't know if people there that had been affected are alive or dead today. Thank God my parents are still alive, but they weren't, when we did the evacuation, they were out of there. But I remember that cloud, it stayed for a long time. Massachusetts is a cold state. So I just remember, just being so discombobulated and not knowing what to do. And I don't remember hearings like this or anything, town halls or anything like that. So getting your voice out here, keeping a record, and once again, staying unified. This is not the time for us to be bickering. And the last thing I'm gonna say is that I put in a call to DC, to one of the people that I know will be able to help us. We also talked to one of the EPA people, one of the former EPA people, so I really believe we're going to have boots on the ground here very soon. We just want you guys to be patient with us, but do your side. Your side is gathering information and keeping that, so with the next meeting, every time we get together, you'll have more and more to build on, because this is a movement. This isn't a one-time event, because as things progress, things will progress, and we want to make sure that you all are okay. Thank you.
We were instructed, we were told that the N95 would not work, and that we needed the respiratory mask with the tank on it.
Okay, I train people all the way up to air tanks. I would not tell anybody in the community to put on, I know which one they're talking. I started to bring that, but I just forgot. I might have one in the trunk. But everybody can't wear that. And that's the only reason why they come out here and say that. So the next best thing is an N95, but even with an N95, based on your physical health, that depends on whether you should wear that. Why? Because it depends on your lung capacity. So if I have emphysema, if I'm a heavy smoker, that may hinder my ability to actually wear that successfully. When they had COVID and they were telling everybody, I immediately called my 84-year-old mother and 92-year-old father and say, don't you dare. First of all, y'all ain't even going out. You know, I call home and they got a mask on wide. You know, because they're listening to the masses and doing it, and I don't want you doing that. So that's one of the reasons now when you work in industry, now the workers probably should have had that on, but I would not encourage that unless you get clearance. You have to go to like a Concentra, because a lot of your regular internal doctors don't do that kind of, you have to breathe into it. They have a pulmonary test to see whether or not you can adequately wear that. So that's one of the reasons. So I know they say, but be careful what they say, because they say they be sitting over in Birmingham and not dealing with what you're dealing with. That's the reality.
Very good, very good. This gives us some information so that we can protect ourselves reasonably, because I think that when they said respiratory masks, people just stopped wearing. If they said the N95 wouldn't work, people just stopped wearing the mask, period.
Ms. Dalby, thank you for offering your training. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's encompassed in that training? I see a lot of things, a lot of places I think you could help us out over the next couple of weeks and months as we go through this process.
Sure. First thing I'd like to train you on is how to use a safety data sheet. Anytime you have chemicals, all of the chemicals come with what they call a safety data sheet. And they're divided into 16 sections. And I usually tell my people, my students, you may not have to know all of this, but at least know number 2, section 2, which is what the hazard is in the chemical. Section 4, which is the first aid, how to respond if I breathe it in or if I absorb it into my skin. Section 8, which is the recommended PPE. The PPE are the gloves, the safety glasses, or in some instances, goggles. Why goggles versus glasses? Because glasses, you got these, ins and outs, right, when you're dealing with chemicals. And then section 11, which is the toxicological information. When it gets into my body, what happens, what areas are being affected. So sections 2, 4, 8, and 11, I immediately tell them that, unless they work in like a laboratory and all that, and they need to know the other sections. I would teach them about PPEs, because like I said, here I am an instructor, and here I am buying latex gloves. Because in my mind, I said, well, you've never had an allergic reaction to them. And all I did, I had never even put the gloves on. All I did was pull them out of the bag. And I had to call Clayton County Fire Department. EMS. Fire department showed up. I had hives all over my body instantaneously, right? So teaching you about PPEs, and then teaching you just some of the basic things that I teach when I go out into companies, but mainly related to chemicals. And I don't just do it around chemicals. We're talking disasters. Florida's getting ready to get hit. So I also add some of that in because I do disaster preparedness training as well. Because I went out to Jonesboro, Arkansas, when was it, last year or the year before? After they had their big storm and trained the entire community in the church. That pastor got a grant and we were able to train them. I've been working with the Harambe House in Savannah, Georgia, training their community. Why? Because when these disasters happen, we are our first responders. They may not come for us. History shows that, right? They may not come for us, so I would rather have people from my community helping to clean up, right, the disaster, because they're going to have more. Input, right? They have more because why? I'm a part of that community. So even with the cleanup here, I don't see why if they need HAZMAP certified people, we can get the people in this community. A lot of our young men and women need jobs. You know, we sent people out when I worked at Clark Atlanta to clean up every major disaster since 9/11. We were down at BP. We went to Katrina, did soil remediation, air quality tests. We did the BP oil spill. We did the train derailment in Aiken, South Carolina. These were community people, right? We're trying to bring that back because that's a big void now in our community. So that's what I'm talking about. Enabling or empowering our community to take our community back. To me, that's real taking back. When now all of us are doing it together, but we're doing it because we have the knowledge on how to do it. Because I'm really disturbed when I go into companies, like I did earlier this week, and I'm asking the safety people, and they can't tell me basic safety stuff. So I had to ask the person, I was like, are you sure they're your safety? Because y'all going to be in trouble if there's an incident. This was a whole other company I was at. I'm like, y'all going to be in trouble if you're dependent on this safety team, right? So that's what it's all about, making sure that we have the proper knowledge, getting trained so that you know what you're doing. And I don't get involved in everything because I'm not jack of all trades. I try to stay in my lane, and when I don't know something, I go right back to school and I try to get it. Okay?
And just to tell you, we met Michelle yesterday at the state legislative meeting. And Michelle and another lady and myself, we went and stayed at the hospital to make sure that Kenny would be, have somebody there until his wife could get there. And so I didn't know the whole story about her background. But she was so quick to say, yes, I will come. And I asked her, how many of us in here would love to take a class like that? Right? And I'm sure Pastor Muse, the Muses would love to sponsor those types of classes. So that's something that we can actually do to empower ourselves in this community. And we don't have to just solely rely on, the government. Now, and I'm sure the media, I don't know how much time they have, but they want to put this on the 12 o'clock news. So if, yes.
My name is Arlen Gibson. I'm a resident of Rockdale County, and I'm devastated, and our kids are devastated by the chemicals that are here. And we don't know the after effects, as the gentleman said a little bit earlier, but this can be a long-term kind of thing that would affect our children. And I'm very concerned about it, and I know all of you are very concerned about that. So I think that what would be prudent on our part is to put pressure on our state EPA and the federal EPA regarding this situation, and they need to come up with some answers. And if they don't come up with some answers, we need to go ahead and organize ourselves together and make sure that we get that information and put pressure on those folks and require answers from them. So I'm just encouraging those who are here today to go ahead and inquire of the state EPA which is responsible for situations like this. EPD, excuse me. And I just want to go ahead and say that Kenny Johnson was a friend of mine. He was my campaign manager when I ran for commissioner. And Kenny was always someone who was concerned about our environment, whether it was water or air or the soil. And he talked about that tirelessly. And I think, if I'm correct, when he was there at the Capitol the other day, and Larry was there, and he told me about the situation that happened with Kenny, how he passed out. And he was talking about the kinds of situations that our communities are dealing with, and in that he passed away. And yeah, I'll keep him in the prayers and his family, and that's all I got to say. I think Larry has something to say as well.
I did.
Well, you did. I think you did.
I was thinking, I was going to give it to you next.
Well, let me just go up here a second and just say, you know, I did go, and I enjoyed your talk. I actually have 30 years in the construction industry, and I deal with SDSs and the training you're talking about. I've had all those trainings. I understand the fit test for the mask, and people do need to understand those things. But what I think we need to understand is that pressure we've all talked about does need to be put on, and we need to reach out to the Lieutenant Governor's office and the Governor. I personally have reached out to the Lieutenant Governor and spoken with the Lieutenant Governor. He has assured me that his office is going to be looking into the Rockdale County biohazard incident. I had a phone call this morning from a friend of mine, Senator Brian Strickland, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Brian Strickland used to be the senator of Rockdale County. He's not now from redistricting, but Senator Strickland is concerned about what's going on in Rockdale County because he still has many friends here. He still represents counties that touch Rockdale County who have been impacted. Senator Strickland assured me, and I was in the parking lot this morning before I came in here, and he had called me. He said he is going to be looking into this himself, reaching out to the governor and the lieutenant governor, because he himself is concerned about how Rockdale County is managing this, and he feels that the state may need to have a more forceful hand in managing and mitigating the situation, which I agree with. And I had called on the Lieutenant Governor's office to look into yesterday, and they assured me that they would, and I did get a phone call back yesterday from them, and we discussed it, and they said they were beginning the process of looking into it. They did say that they had their hands full with the hurricane cleanup. But Senator Strickland made a comment to me a few minutes ago, and it really was an excellent comment. He said, we're dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, but this Rockdale incident is an ongoing incident. It's not an aftermath. So it was heartwarming for me to hear a state official acknowledge that we're in the midst of a crisis in Rockdale County. I am personally impacted. I have a business 500 feet away from Biolab, right across the road. So we've not had access. We went in a couple of times. Monday we were given access, and then all of a sudden people with masks and biohazard suits said, you can't be here, you have to leave, so we did evacuate. There was a letter sent out last Friday that clearly stated that the area that our business is in was not safe to habitat. It was not safe to be in. So I do feel, as many of you, that this is a much more serious issue than what it's being communicated with us. And we do not know what the long-term effects or the immediate short-term effects are. Like many of you may know, I was just elected to the Rockdale County School Board, and if you voted for me, thank you, and if you didn't, I'm going to earn your vote next time. But what I would like to say is I do agree with the superintendent's decision of not having in-person class, because I don't think we can have these kids traveling in buses and going through these things with the air, because we don't know what we're dealing with right now. We need to be communicated with on a daily basis, to know what's going on, and they keep saying the cleanup is what causes the additional disturbance with the gases. They need to give us a timeline of, if it's 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, just say how long the cleanup is going to occur. And I agree with what was said. We need independent testing. We can't let Biolab do the testing. Again, that's like letting the fox guard the hen house, isn't it? So we need to have independent testing. The EPA needs to do the testing. The EPD needs to do the testing. And Biolab, in my opinion, I'm going to tell you guys who I think is running this whole thing. In my opinion, and from what I've seen, because I've been at Ground Zero and I've been bossed around by civilians who work for Biolab. Biolab is running this. They're telling people what to do and what to say. Our government is not running this. They're the mouthpieces for Biolab, and that's the truth, and that's all I got to say.
And you've just been watching live at that meeting concerning the Biolab fire, that chemical fire that's been ongoing in Conyers. We're going to continue to follow that. That meeting is going to continue throughout much of the day, so we're going to keep following the latest there. But of course, this comes after a city official actually collapsed following a meeting last night where he was expressing some concern about, shortness of breath. He had shortness of breath, but he was concerned about the community, the health impacts, the potential health impacts from that Biolab fire. And he was describing kind of the negative effects on himself as well as his community, and he ended up dying after collapsing. So that is still under investigation, but obviously a lot of fear, a lot of concern and outrage in the community. We're going to keep following the latest there. In the meantime, I want to get to some other stories that we are following as well in our segment called In Case You Missed It.